Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of From Page to Stage. I'm your host, Wendy Corner, and this podcast is about and for authors who are going to get on stage or who are already on stage. Now, sometimes authors go, my book is my speaking, it does its work for me, and I go, no, you need to do a bit more than that. You need to talk about the wonderful wisdom that you've encapsulated in your book. So this is where From Page to Stage comes in. This podcast enables you to have a one-on-one conversation with our audience and get your message out there. So that's the premise of From Page to Stage. Now, today I have the joy and pleasure of having a chat more than an interview, having a chat with a good friend of mine, Jennifer Regular. Jennifer is in Canada and sitting there in front of an open fire and nicely warming herself. And here I am in Malaysia, sweating my bits off. We met online in a post-COVID world, and I am very grateful for that introduction. Now, I will let Jennifer give a bit more information about herself because she knows herself far better than I do. Jennifer, give us a clue. What's brought you to this point in your life?
So many years before into this moment. What has brought me to this point in my life? A lot of personal growth, professional growth, evolution, a lot of self-discovery. You just mentioned about, I know myself better than you might know me. Well, I'm still learning about myself, and that's actually part of the first book that I wrote was Embrace Your Power, a healing journal of self-discovery. Because it's so often that we forget who we truly are.
Yes.
And it takes a lot to realign and get to that truth. And I find that balance actually comes from living our truth. Well, how do we live our truth if we don't know what the truth is? If we've lost touch with who we are, our sense of self. And so, I'll go into the background of the book, but it's really been a journey of self-discovery, of finding out who I am, what I'm meant to do, and whether I even deserve to be here. There was an article that was published in Women Thrive magazine last November where I wrote about transforming my story from accidental birth to intentional, accidental to intentional because I was born much later in life. My mother thought she had gone through menopause and didn't know until 6 months later that she was having me. And when I turned out to be the fourth girl instead of the boy that she hoped would be a consolation prize, I joked that we never got along since because I always felt like, why I wasn't meant to be here. And Wendy, there was a lot in my journey that took me to the place of recognizing that I was meant for this world, that maybe I wasn't meant to belong, that I was meant to stand out. And that's been my message for others too. And to really let people know that you are meant for this world. And it's been my deepest desire for everyone to feel like they have a purpose.
Yes.
They were born on purpose, they have a purpose, and they will hopefully die having lived their purpose fully.
Wow. So I mentioned you were from Canada. I've learned something today because I didn't realize that you were a surprise baby. I can imagine your mother's shock.
Yes.
And only discovering 6 months in that, no, they weren't fibroids, they were a baby.
She had some choice words for the doctor, I'll say that. And of course, all this came to me through a sibling who shared this story with me. And I didn't actually confront my mother about it until decades later. And I'm so glad I did before she passed to realize that it was just a story.
Right.
And I spent so many years thinking that that was the case and trying to make up for the fact that I was here. I was born, so the whole perfectionism and overachieving and overcompensating and feeling over responsible all stemmed from that belief.
Oh,
Yeah.
isn't it interesting
Mm-hmm.
how we can take on stories
Yeah.
and make them our own? And I'm going to take a guess that the story that you were given happened before you were 7. In
Oh,
that time
probably.
where
Yeah.
you don't question anything.
Yes,
You
that's
take it,
right.
everything that's told you as though it's gospel, because all the people around you are older and more experienced and hopefully trustworthy, and you don't have that part of your brain which goes, bullshit. Yeah. Oh,
Yeah. And it's interesting that you mentioned that too, because very unexpectedly, I was featured in Mia Doucet's book, Strong, Women Who Triumph Over Trauma. And she had interviewed, I think, well, over 100 women, but about 88 of them, I believe, went into the book. So she just listened to their stories, including mine, and then wrote about it. And I thought we were just meeting, like you and I met, we're just getting to know each other. And then it turned into be an interview for this book. And it was all women's stories, childhood experiences before the age of 7. And now I understand why. I actually didn't know that until you mentioned it.
yeah.
Interesting.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
It's a powerful book. Highly recommend it. I'm
Ah,
reading through it and going, hang on, I know that. Oh, in fact, I know a number of people who were in that book.
oh, wow. Isn't that amazing?
So yes, I am in the process of writing a review for it, but I can't write a review at the moment because I'm in a different country and the Kindle's not accepting where I am and the IP and all of that jazz. So wait till I get back to Melbourne and then I will be writing a review.
Yes, yes.
Very powerful
Great.
book, very powerful book. Okay, so that's kind of where you came from. You're in Canada. Which side?
I'm in the West Coast right now, but I was more central in Ontario. So I'm a few provinces over to the west right now. Well, I actually have South African roots. So I'm full blood South African. Parents, sisters, all from Cape Town, although I was born in Canada about 10 years after they arrived in Canada.
Right.
So so I usually say that I'm Canadian born with South African roots to acknowledge that too.
Nice. Nice. Okay. So that's where you are now. We've already mentioned that we live in a global world. So,
Yes.
so you
So in British Columbia is where I'm sitting in the mountains right now.
Oh,
yeah.
I would love to see some mountains again. Having Scotland, Perth is not exactly mountainous, and here in KL, I'm in a concrete jungle.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
So I am looking forward to getting out to some green fairly soon.
Yes. Yes, I remember I grew up in Toronto, also the concrete jungle. And I remember driving out to BC, British Columbia, where I am, and there was these beautiful bluffs and mountains that I was passing along the way. Also went through the Rockies, and then I had posted a lot of my journey and said, "No, these are the kind of skyscrapers I can get behind. These are the real size skyscrapers, not the buildings, but the mountains." Yeah.
Yes. Oh, used to love going to Switzerland for that very reason.
Oh, yeah. I remember flying over the Alps. The plane was so low over them that it was just so breathtakingly spectacular. Absolutely gorgeous. But we're talking about page to stage. So
we are. Let's get back to it. Thank you for okay.
Yeah.
So you started, when did you start writing? I don't mean published writing
Yeah.
per se.
Well, the earliest memory that I have of writing was actually when I was 10 years old.
10.
And that was actually when I conceived of the book that I mentioned earlier about Embrace Your Power, a healing journal of self-discovery. Back then, I was 10 years old and I was living in an apartment building in Toronto. And I would go outside a lot. So I would, walk along the rocks, and there was little tiny hills, green hills. I liked being around the green and the trees and just being around there. And that's where I would do a lot of reflection and a lot of thinking observing. I was a very observant child, still a very observant adult. And I started writing down my observations and my thoughts and my ideas, and created different chapters about how society determines our destiny at 10 years old. Because, well, I don't know. You said we absorb so much by the time we're 7. So I guess a few years later, I was starting to write about those observations and what I've absorbed, and really felt a lot different from my peers. So I didn't really feel like I can talk to them. Didn't really talk to the parents so much. I did a little bit, but more so I started writing and writing to myself and just having conversations within the writing. And so, 3 decades later, that book came out. But that's my earliest recollection of actually writing,
Love
was
it.
when I was 10 years old.
Love it.
Yeah.
Well, this is the thing, when I'm speaking to authors, my first question is not when did you get published, but when did you start writing? Because so many have had that creative muse, that urge to write from a young age. And yeah, beautiful, beautiful. Okay, so your 10-year-old musings
Yes,
evolved
exactly.
into a book. When did
Yes.
that get published?
In 2014.
14. Okay, so we
Yeah.
are 10 years.
10 years ago.
Congratulations.
Yes, that's right.
Yay.
Yes.
Okay, so that was your first one,
Yes.
but that wasn't your only one, was it?
That was the only one that I had solely published. And then I was part of Mia Doucet's book that I mentioned there too. And then I was published in the local paper and published in different newsletters, and then in the magazine, Women Thrive magazine was my first magazine publication that I was invited into November of 2023. And then just recently, April 22nd, was the inaugural launch and issue of Her Nation magazine. And I was also had the privilege of having an article in that about how to overcome imposter syndrome for good. And I continue to write and be a contributor for that magazine, and also for sacredyou.love, who was formerly known as Our Sacred Communities blog, and for my own inspired living blog on lightingthepath.ca. And right now I'm actually writing again. We're writing because it's a book collaboration, for the ultimate guide to living your legacy. The ultimate guide to leaving a legacy. My chapter is about a living legacy. It's about leading with passion and lighting the path to profound impact and collective transformation. So there's more about my story in there, and also the biggest lessons I learned and now get to share and teach us insightful ways that we can lead with passion. So that's actually coming out. So you're first to hear, all of you that are listening or watching right now. That'll be out in September, mid-September of 2024.
Right.
You'll be able to see that everywhere.
Well, okay, listen, audience, we'll pop in the show notes, will be amended in September when the book comes out. We'll make sure the link is in there. So if you happen to be watching this later, go watch it. Go check out the link. New book coming in September. You have been given fair warning. Look out for it. Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Jennifer. So
thank you.
Tell me about your speaking ability. When did you start speaking? And I don't mean it too.
Yeah. Well, it was again when I was a young child, there was a speech contest that I had entered. And I remember talking about being an aunt, starting to be an aunt at the age of 6. And I think it was when I was 7. So about 5 years after, no, 5 years after that. So around the age of 12, I started speaking. I was invited into that speech contest. I was talking about that. And then I would just get invited in front of the classroom at times, very randomly, like not part of an assignment, to speak about big things that may have happened, which is interesting. I'm not sure why that occurred, but there was different school assignments that were part of where speaking was, when presenting was part of the curriculum. But it was
That's curious to me, if I can interject here. That's really curious for me, because in the UK, that's not part of any curriculum.
Ah, okay.
It's not an expected skill that you learn through school.
Oh,
So I've been sitting here going, when's the first time I started talking? Well, it's certainly, at that point, it was usually shush, out you go if you're talking too much.
Right. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's curious.
That's
So in
happened too.
Canada, like the US,
Mm.
speaking is part of your curriculum. You need to do it.
You need to get up in front of people. Yeah. And share
Right.
something. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So I guess there were some presentation skills that were developed through that too, and speaking. And then I just started leading workshops, facilitating workshops on mostly on self-empowerment, transformation, spiritual wellness strategies. And that probably started in my 30s, I think. I want to say around then. And then that's when the book Embrace Your Power actually did end up getting published. It was because after one of my full day workshops, someone had asked for something like a workbook or a manual with a lot of the content that I had shared and was presenting. And then I said, okay. And then I worked with a coach and editor to publish the book. Like, well, why not bring this out? Because it's very much related to what the content was about. And so the speaking led to the writing, but the writing was already there before, which is interesting because I found that happened every time since that there's a dance between the two. The writing, somebody read something and then I get asked to speak about it, or something like an aspect of it, and then I speak and then I think, oh, I can write more about that. When you start replaying things in your mind, or new ideas come in, or ways to expand on a different thought or concept, and then I'd start writing about that. I would blog about it, put in a newsletter, or create something else about it, and then again be asked to speak and be able to share something. So it goes back and forth, Wendy, which is really interesting.
It does.
Yeah.
Because some of the people that I've interviewed have started on the speaking, and like you, people have said, you got something I can take away about that?
Right.
Give me a few minutes, and have gone and written a book.
That's
So
exactly
some people
what
start
happens.
from the stage and go to the page and then go backwards and forwards. And as you
Yes.
say, the thing is, your words have power, regardless of whether you are primarily on the page
Right.
or on the stage. Both of them are valid and back each other up.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So the little bit into the world, and here I am, was around 2014.
Yes, when it was published. Yeah, it was in 2014.
And your workshops were around that time as well. Forgive me, I didn't quite hear the date.
Yeah, they started earlier. I think it was a couple of years before that.
Okay.
Yeah, I can't quite remember the years. I feel like I started doing energy work and practicing that in 2008. And it wasn't too much longer after that I started doing the workshops and speaking and just hosting discussion groups. It was not quite speaking, but like just sharing. And then it developed more into speaking. And then in 2017 was when I was on like actual stages at local festivals, the Intuitive Arts Festival, Inspired Wellness Fairs, those kind of stages. Yeah.
That's the thing, isn't it? When people, particularly authors who are, I've just about got it down on paper, and that took courage. That was a stretch. And you go, well, now you need to talk about it. What? Really? Can't get up on stage. And at that point, that up on stage, I go, hang on a minute, what's your definition of a stage?
Yeah, right.
So audience, if your definition of a stage is getting up on a raised platform with a microphone in your hand and spouting forth, and you're going, I can't do that. It doesn't have to be. There are different forms of speaking, different forms of platform, stage, if you will. Jennifer's just shared with us her facilitation work. That is a stage. Podcasting, a one-on-one conversation, is a stage. Virtual summits are stages, as well as the physical, yes, get up on a stage. So there are different ways of doing it. So that's, again, something I'm challenging at the moment. What is your definition of a stage? Thank you for bearing with me on that one.
Absolutely. And it's a newer perspective for me to think about platform too, because, the stage, the podium, the platform, and then I talk about platforms, which is why I started my podcasts, right? The Wisdom Speakers and Seekers podcast, Wise Women Wednesdays, Awaken and Ascend, which is a YouTube show now. And the summits that I did last year on Wake Up and Change the World, where I brought global speakers to wake up and change the world. We had different themes. And the reason I do all of that is to provide a platform, a stage, a way for people to speak and share their messages. I call them messengers more so than guests because, I want that to be heard and to be held by the audience and really taken in, to support that transformational journey, to support our purpose, our mission, our values, our potential to really unlock that. Because like I said at the beginning, you are meant for this world. And so we need you on stage and sharing your message in whatever form that might take.
Yes.
And you're right, and writing's great, but there's something really powerful when you voice those words and you share it. There's a resonance.
Yes.
There's a resonance.
I mean, again, with the thing with the podcast is I will always put mine up first and foremost on YouTube, because I'm so aware of the importance of the visuals.
Yes, me
coming
too.
from my background as being a speech pathologist. Now, the point of that, though, is a lot of people these days listen to podcasts while they're on the treadmill, while they're driving, while they're doing the dishes, plug in the pods and off you go. That's not so easy with a YouTube vid. So at some point, we are going to do another launch and we'll go on to the audio versions only. But as I said, from me, first off, have the visuals. But as you're saying, we all consume things in different ways these days. And getting your message out to wherever. I mean, podcasts are listened to across the world. Wherever there's a Wi-Fi connection, you've got people listening.
It's true. I agree with you about YouTube, though, and the visual, Wendy, because there's more connection.
Yes.
There's more chance of absorption instead of, multitasking, listening while you're doing other things. You're still going to absorb the content and the context, and that'll be there. But it's just even more potent to have the visual, to be like a talk show, and to be able to see each other and connect and just really tune in, because there is more resonance there. There's more potency there. You'll probably experience more inspiration, insight, and motivation to apply and integrate what you're listening to. But Wendy, as we know, so much of our communication is nonverbal. So though the words have power, so do the visuals and the body language and the expression and the energy that's shared between. And I think tuning in and connecting with that is really exceptional. And we have lost that deeper connection.
Yes.
And yeah, like you say, a lot of that communication is nonverbal. And so we miss a lot of that if we're only listening.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I personally am a great listener to books because I like to do more than one thing at once. I mean, I get bored when I'm doing the dishes. Yeah. So I like to feed my mind while I'm doing it. Otherwise it's but I can really log into an audio book. And when you've got the author, as long as they're good enough, narrating, the difference it makes, because you really feel connected with the book.
Yes.
Because you're hearing them bring it to life. As I said, if they're a good narrator. Now, some of them are not. But certainly, I mean, I'm producing a solo book next year.
Yay.
And I will be putting it on Audible. So, yeah. And the whole point is that it has more power when you, as you say, you can connect with those nonverbals. even the roughly 40% that's conveyed vocally is there on audio, which you do not get from the written word only.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, you can convey so much expression in your voice.
Yeah.
Okay, so we know when you started writing, we know when you started speaking. What have you got on the go at the moment? We know there's a multi-author book coming in September.
Mm-hmm.
You alluded to a solo book.
There will be another one. Yes, I'm working on it. A lot of my story is around awakening through grief. And I've done some speaking live events on the courage to grieve, for example, and life after loss, and used to do some healing work around the journey through grief. And so I'm going to write about that. I'm going to write about awakening through grief. And I can't give you a date for that. But now that I've put it out there into the world, I'll deliver. Because words have power, right?
Oh, they do.
So now that I've said that,
recorded, and somebody's going to come back and Jen,
where's that book? I need it. I need it now.
You'd be surprised how many people have given me an exclusive
or
on something that they're working on, and have gone, do you need an accountability buddy for that?
Well, if that's something that your audience is interested in, then I encourage them to contact me and let me know. And then that'll make it go even faster. I'm like, okay, because now I have someone to actually give it to. And that will really speed things up. There is a speaking engagement, though, when it's coming up. It's a visionary conference. It's coming up on May 21st. So if you're listening to this before then you'll get to join us. But it is something that happens a couple times a year. And it's put on by the Life School. Ilona Lapari is the host and founder of the Life School. And it's all different speakers talking about purpose-driven leadership, being a visionary, creating some global impact. And so lots of great speaking, conversation, dialogue, panels happening with that. And you can register at no cost. So I strongly encourage, if you're a speaker, to register for that and be a part of it. Take part in this. If not in May, there's another one in the fall. It might be in November. You'll definitely find out more about that with the link that I'm sure you'll put in, Wendy. And yeah, check it out, because that's it's going to be great.
One of the things I commit to doing, here we go, audience, another flag moment.
Yay.
When authors who've been on the Page to Stage have new stuff coming out, they let me know. I go and change the show notes. So if, as you're watching this, as you're listening to this, you go, I want to know more about that. Remember the name. Remember. And then come back and check it out, because the show notes are dynamic, so that we do make sure that they are up to date.
Oh, great.
Okay. So thank you for that, Jennifer. We will make sure that September, October, before we've got once you've got a date and a link for that. Now that, as Jennifer said, is open to both you as a participant and also potentially virtual stage authors. Flagging that up.
Yes.
If that feels too much of a stretch, let me know and we can do some work on that first. Okay, how exciting. So we've got the conference in May.
Yes.
And we've got a potential one again in November. You're involved in a multi-author book, which is getting published in
September.
I'm just getting the timeline going. Yep.
Yeah.
And solo book sometime next year.
Yes. And you'll also find me on the Inspired Living blog on my website. So there's articles there as well. And I'm a monthly contributor for Her Nation magazine as well. So lots of articles there. So yeah, lots of places to read or listen.
Love it. So your words have power wherever they go. Now, we'll make sure that all these links are there, because actually you've got a link tree, haven't you?
I do. That's right.
So doesn't it make life easier? Go,
so much easier.
the link tree. Mine needs to be updated. Note to self. Yeah. So thank you very much, Jennifer. But as we're winding up, I'm going to ask you, can you share any words of wisdom with our audience? That how do you take your written words and embody them, bring them to life when you're speaking?
Connection.
Pardon?
Connection.
Connection.
Connection. Yes, connection to your why, connection to what's at stake if you don't, connection to yourself, your words, your message, and connection to the higher purpose, the deeper meaning of what you're sharing and the impact that can have. And most importantly, connection with the audience and your reader and their voice that's wanting to be heard.
Love it. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
One word connection. Yeah, there's going to be something under there. We need to unpack that. Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. So there you go, audience. When you are considering getting onto stage and you're going, what if I? It's all about the audience, connecting with them at such a deep level because you've done all the other connections well.
Less impressing, more connecting.
Yes, less impressing, more connecting. Like it. Thank you. Okay, Jennifer, have we missed anything off?
I don't think so. I mean, the audience can write comments if we did. And we'll do another podcast. But no, I think we covered everything.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Jennifer, for sharing with us your page to stage.
Thank
from
you.
Us. Bye from us.